We cannot say that alignment really exists or it doesn't exist, because it really exists from the point of view of the person, from the point of view of the seeker, of somebody who's making some sort of effort to try to realize something. Maybe pushed at the beginning from, let's say, a need for transcendence, or to overcome sorrow, or to experience and reach this state that is described by various masters in history. But really we cannot say that alignment really exists, because once the seeker, so the person who's trying to achieve this state is gone, then who is achieving what, basically? There's no more the question or the effort of somebody trying to get somewhere and to get to some spiritual levels and eventually reach this state called enlightenment. In the beginning, because we are totally identified with our mind, with our body, due to the conditionings and to the habits and to the constant experience of the five senses, we believe that there is an entity inside ourselves actually experiencing life. So there is a life out there and somebody inside the body experiencing it. There is even the idea of somebody thinking actually our own thoughts, so the idea of a thinker, of a doer, rather than realizing that thoughts, they appear within the spectrum space of the consciousness, of the awareness. We think that's actually we are thinking those thoughts, but in reality those simply appear and they vanish naturally if we don't give attention to it, or if we don't have any kind of a business related interest towards what the mind is putting in front of us. So it becomes a quite complex topic, because we're trying to grasp it intellectually, or we are trying to have a particular experience, or to achieve a particular state. But this is something that is confined, and due to the fact that it happens within a person, a doer, of somebody who's trying to get somewhere. So we cannot actually say that alignment really exists, or it doesn't exist neither, because if the person not making the effort and not experiencing life as a separate individual is not there anymore, then it is completely gone. And in the beginning, when we might start our path, our journey into this kind of spiritual investigation of ourselves, we go through that effort because we are fighting our own tendencies, and we are within the cage of the identification with the body-mind. But later on, once by grace and by the fact that we are surrendering, let's say, our internal tendencies just to life, this is something that happens naturally. This is something we cannot decide to say I'm enlightened or I'm not enlightened. I will really be careful to listen to people who say that they are enlightened because who is really enlightened? It's just an idea of somebody who has achieved a particular state. So I will be careful to listen to somebody making such a statement and actually taking advice from them. What I encourage and what I have noticed throughout the years with my personal investigation, which has taken different forms, from childish forms such as reading spiritual books and exploring drugs to explore consciousness, to become a Buddhist practitioner following a teacher, to then the qigong and everything in between that we experience as life. What I came to realize is that things are much more simple what we think they are. This is due to the fact that the literature in this field is quite flourishing, especially nowadays, in all sorts of weird forms. But we read from the tales of teachers and masters who try to describe this state, and unfortunately, like anything in life, we have to experience things firsthand to truly understand, because experience doesn't have any shape in one sense. We have to go through things to have a sense of them. So the problem is that by going into seeker mode, which is the beginning of each of us, when we start to be attracted by this possibility of improving ourselves and discovering something more, it is quite tricky, because the seeker, so ourself, our mind, tries to interpret what these teachers or ancient text might report. I will personally say that things are much more simple, and this is to my personal experience, and to see actually also around me the development of certain people and situations. And I would say that a very simple way to investigate for ourselves, rather than believing me or anybody who has something to say about this topic, is to try to not try, but really paying attention to the nature of our attention, because our attention is usually totally fragmented, and it has so much to do with all the things that the mind puts in front of us: fears, businesses, relationship, all the attachment and adverse things that we try to avoid in life. So for me, it is important to investigate who is actually attracted by those things, what it is. And in a very simple term, I will say that an effective way that I've found throughout the years to go back to that place of certainty, which is our own self, is by placing the attention on the nature of attention. So trying to find out who is experiencing sound right now through my ears, who is seeing through my eyes, who is experiencing my mind. Who am I at the end of the day? The very simple question that some great teachers have put in front of their students or their people to guide them towards this recognition, such as Ramana Maharshi. When we ask these kind of questions, if we really give space to these questions, we don't try to find an answer, an intellectual answer. These questions have the power to bring the attention back inside ourselves. And in one sense, the internal practices such as qigong can bring that kind of insight, although there is a big trick. In fact, qigong is not, let's say, I think in my opinion, the best way to investigate this. Because with this kind of questions, we are trying to bring back the attention to the subject of our experiences. So we are not, let's say, paying attention to what we listen through our senses, but to who is listening to our senses. And as I said, this kind of internal contemplation shouldn't bring an intellectual answer, because if they bring an intellectual answer, that answer will be the object of what we are perceiving in that moment. And anything that we perceive is temporary, in the sense that comes and goes. But what we're trying to investigate with this, let's say, enlightened question or enlightenment questions, is actually try to find the subject of our experience. Who am I? Who is listening through my ears at the moment? Who is watching through my eyes? Not what I'm listening, what I'm watching through my eyes at the moment. What I'm listening through my ears, what I'm watching through my eyes. That is the object. It is something that is appearing in myself. And the object implies that there is an object and there is a subject, which means that there are two elements. This is what we call duality, the duality that we experience where we are ignorant towards the nature of ourselves. But with this kind of approach, we can come to recognize something different, which at the beginning, might even be very subtle or not clearly understood. It really depends from the maturity that we have. And the reason why I said that the qigong path, like many other paths and systems that focus on an object, are not direct investigations paths, because by placing the attention on the object, we don't put the attention on the subject, or on who is practicing, on who is experiencing certain things, or who is cultivating the energy, the vital energy that we have in the body. At the same time, I feel to say that probably due to the path, to the qigong path, and to my personal interest in really go deeper into this kind of question, the qigong really improved, in one sense, my ability of seeing, because when we have energy, we have clarity, and when everything is functioning well, it's easier, in one sense. But this implies that even myself, I discarded the importance of the practice itself, which means I went beyond the energy practice itself. And this is something that it is very subtle, because sometimes, most of the time, I would say, due to the videos that I show of the Chia missions, and to what you find on my website, you think that the goal is actually getting to these skills. So we have to separate between achieving these skills and actually investigating who we are. Investigating who we are, we can do it even when we are sick. We can do it even if our body is not functioning well. Even those circumstances can become a platform actually to inquire who is suffering, or what it is this. Because it is the identification with the body-mind that makes us suffer even more. So you might have a physical discomfort, but you might still inquire into the nature of yourself. At the same time, I feel that the two approaches can lead to great result, because and I don't want to go too much into this, because I don't like to talk about vital energy in an intellectual way, as you might know it. I don't do it on the channel, I don't do it with my students. We have to find out for ourselves. But ourself and vital energy are no different. So when our awareness is in that pure space, free from identification with the body-mind, the energy flows better. And of course, we use certain exercises or thoughts to develop certain things related to the physical and energetic aspect. When we dwell, let's say, when we have a glimpse, then when we are able to stay in this state of detachment, even our personal practice, energy practice, will go stronger, and higher human possibilities will be possible, and it will be easier and natural to accomplish. Because from a perspective of the person and the mind, everything is quite limited. But when we are able to, due to our initial effort, to investigate into the nature of the mind, into what we might call it enlightenment, God, infinite, unknown, life, whatever terms you want to put in it, it's fine, because words are quite empty at the end of the day. When we do this kind of investigation, we can really explore more of life and function better. But as I said in a previous part of this video, it's not actually 100% bullet proven that the qigong is going to lead us to this kind of development. We might just go into developing certain abilities, but not recognize the emptiness of everything that we are perceiving. So the emptiness of even the seeker or even the practitioner. That's why I've tried to push in a nice way my students to explore these kind of subjects, because at the end of the day we may achieve an high mastery of qi, but it doesn't mean that our ego has vanished. We might be there with a great sense of importance, great sense of identity, of who I am, what I'm doing, I'm an energetic practitioner, all of this. But at the end of the day, this is a temporary thing that we're doing in life. At the same time, I will contradict myself that by merging with vital energy, by abiding in this state of non-identification, I found that it is a very complete way of exploring, let's say, the boundless possibilities that we have as human beings. So I hope that I didn't confuse much with this video, especially if you are new to this kind of subject. I just felt the need to highlight the fact that enlightenment is not an achievement, and we cannot even say that exists or doesn't exist, because it really depends from where we are at that moment. If there is a seeker, there is a goal to reach, but if the seeker vanishes, there are no goals to be reached. And what I wanted to say regarding to the vital energy is that for sure it is a great improvement that we bring in our life, and a great possibility that we can explore in life, but still it belongs to the experientiable, which means to what comes and goes. Although being in a state of not-identification with our body-mind, with ourselves as practitioner, with ourselves as a Taoist, Christians, or whatever it is, when we do a certain kind of energy work, it really improves and increase this ability of dwelling into this state, let's call it like this.